Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Give me a green check, please. All right. Welcome. Welcome to our first virtual seminar of the spring semester. There you go, Dan. Sorry, Dan's behind me being annoying, everybody. Anyway, but we all know Dan, so that's okay. Anyway, hopefully everybody's enjoying this wonderful weather we're having. But it's with great pleasure I get to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Kelsey Backels. She's from the Counseling Psychologist Professor and Department Chairperson Director. So she's the Chair of the Department of Counseling and Human Development and Director of Counseling Center since 2002 here at Norrisville. She began her tenure at Norrisville University in August 1991. She was probably like 8 then. Dr. Backels has been licensed as a psychologist by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania since 1993. She earned her PhD in counseling psychology from Ball State University in 1991 and her master's in education and counselor education from James Madison University in 1978 and her BS in psychology from Madison College, which is now James Madison University, in 1976. Dr. Backels has been a member of Lancaster County Critical Incident Stress Management Team since 2006. So without further ado, I will hand off the telephone to Dr. Backels.
Thank you, Dwayne. Can you guys hear me? Do I get the green light if you hear me? The green hand or whatever that is?
You'll put the green check up. There you go.
Okay,
you see
great. All righty. Well, you might wonder why the Director of a Counseling Center is talking about critical incident stress management, but as Dwayne indicated, this has been something I've done on a volunteer basis over the past several years and feel pretty strongly about. So today I'm coming to you talking about critical incident stress debriefing, critical incident stress management, which for someone who's been trained as a psychologist was a very new skill set to have to learn. So in any event, the things I'm talking about this afternoon will be in relation to my work with the Lancaster County Critical Incident Stress Management Team, which has been in existence since '96 to serve emergency personnel who have experienced critical incidents. This team is all volunteer. No one gets paid for this, and it's organized under the Lancaster County Emergency Management Agency. So I need to give a shout out to my mentors in that program. It would be Brenda Pittman, the Lancaster County CISM Coordinator, and Dr. Ken Rouse, the Clinical Director of Lancaster County CISM. As I talk this afternoon, I'm going to use the term wisdom quite a bit, which is what we shoot for in our CISM debriefings, and I'm going to credit Dr. Rouse for the notion of wisdom. So in any event, I will be using the terms CISD, Critical Incident Stress Debriefing, and CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management, interchangeably. Within my PowerPoints, the term CISM will refer to the debriefing process, which is where I've got the bulk of my experience. I'll be giving some information today in terms of different types of debriefings we've had. That's going to be composite information to protect confidentiality, since obviously I can't speak about what we do in our debriefing processes. Are you all doing okay so far? Okay. If you have questions, you can stop me and ask them, or you can wait until the end, whichever works for you. But let me talk first about definitions. What is critical incident stress management? It is a comprehensive, systematic, and multi-tactic intervention approach to manage critical incident stress after a traumatic event. CISM is a coordinated program of tactics that are linked and blended together to alleviate the reactions to traumatic stress. Today we're going to be discussing the CISD part of CISM, as that is what we do for first responders, and for us, those include police, fire, emergency medical services, dispatch, and lifeguards. In essence, we're a team made up of mental health peers such as myself, folks who have a background in mental health, and then first responder peers, or peer debriefers, who are individuals who are in the field. They are the firefighters, the police, the emergency medical service folks. And together we provide support and a vehicle in a small group setting to process thoughts, reactions of the first responders involved in a critical incident, which, by the way, is defined as an incident in which there is the death of a child, multiple deaths, or another traumatic incident. And our my experience so far has been mostly with firefighters, and mostly when there has firefighters and police, and mostly when there's been the death of a child or multiple deaths. And why do we include dispatch, you might wonder? They are very much included and very much welcome in our debriefings because they receive the first call. They might hear the upsetting details, the sounds, voices in pain, voices in fear, and it helps the dispatch folks to get some closure on what ended up happening during that particular call, because they take the call and then they may never know what happened. So we have certainly had dispatch present at our debriefings. Let's talk about what makes a critical incident so difficult on a first responder. And there are essentially 4 steps in this. The first step is there's a critical incident, and it causes critical incident stress, which triggers the fight, flight, or freeze responses, which trigger feelings of grief, fear, confusion, and anger, which triggers physiological changes and behavioral changes. Alrighty. I'm trying to get my PowerPoint here to go with what I'm talking about here, so just hold tight with me for a minute. The first responder thinks, did I do okay? Am I good enough? What happened here? Am I in danger? The brain tries to develop an answer or just avoids the questioning. Talking about it in a group process helps resolve these questions so they don't just go around and around in our heads. So how does critical incident stress debriefing help? Talking helps reduce the critical incident stress by providing information about the incident and providing information about how peers are thinking. And these would be the other folks. And if you look at your PowerPoints now, you can see on your screen, we see group-centered versus leader-centered. There are 2 ways to run a debriefing process. And our CISM utilizes group-centered because it uses the wisdom of the group. We do not come in as the big experts in what to do, but we rely as leaders on the experience and the knowledge and the skills of the group members. We assume their resilience as first responders, and that is noted. And generally, in a group of first responders, you are going to have the more seasoned veterans who have been there, done that kind of thing. They've been involved in a similar critical incident. They know how they got through, and they are very willing to help the less seasoned, perhaps younger members of the team learn how to handle this. So when we're providing information, or when the peers are providing information, they are talking about the way folks are reacting is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. As Dr. Ralph might explain it, it is not normal to see bloody body parts or various things, or children pass away, or the horrible things that you see in some types of critical incidents. So we do the best we can, our brains do the best they can to wrap around the incident. But generally what you have is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. We help each other identify the nature of distress by asking, what was the worst part for you? And we'll go into detail here in a little bit, but this is just kind of a general overview. We draw on the wisdom from peers to address each of the stressors, and then we provide peer support and encouragement. And again, it's mostly the peers. It is the firefighters, the police, the dispatch, those folks who have already been in the situation before, who are talking about what it's like. Because as a mental health professional, I don't know what this is like. I have no idea what it's like to fight a fire or make an ambulance call or anything like that. So we mental health debriefers very much depend on the peer debriefers, the ones who are in the field, to give us credibility. You know, we're in the room because of them. They lend us credence, so we're very happy to have them there to work with. And finally, critical incident stress debriefing provides a structure and a safe, non-judgmental environment in which to talk about these incidents. Okay, as you can see on your screen now, peers can normalize their reactions. We can do it too, but the peers have greater credibility. All right, so let's look at kind of the ins and outs of CISM. How does it work? How does the actual, okay, let's talk about a critical incident. A critical incident is a traumatic incident. And the example would be injury or death of a colleague, or the suicide of a colleague, a mass casualty, death, violence involving a child, a prolonged incident. Those are examples of critical incidents. And why are they so difficult? Because a challenge is made, a challenge or demand is made on the individual, on the first responder. And critical incidents shake up our worldview and our assumptions and our realities. Things are not the way we thought they were. They're not the way they seem. Finally, a critical incident engages our old stuff, such as old issues, fears, and unpleasant emotional memories. And an emotional memory is defined as, okay, the charts are flipping around a bit. Let me see here. Hold on just a second. Okay. When our assumptions are challenged, these things become themes in debriefings. And some of our assumptions are children shouldn't die, and people should be responsible, and I must be perfect at my job. The system should be better, but it isn't. Or God or your higher power should not allow this to happen. Children don't deserve to be hurt, or I could be killed or hurt doing my job. The debriefers also, I'm thinking, listening to myself here, the debriefers are also listening to some very tough stuff. And while we don't have debriefings for ourselves, we do have, obviously, our own support system, and we can talk with one another. And I'm remembering a particularly difficult incident where I went home, and for about an hour, I pretty much talked my husband's ear off. Obviously, no confidential information, no identifying details, but it was tough to hear these things. So there's a lot of emotion in a room. There's a lot of affect in a room. So in any event, the debriefers and the peers and the first responders might feel angry or sad or scared, and some of the debriefing things might include children shouldn't die, but they do. We just saw that. We just saw that we had to deal with children dying in this car accident or this drowning or this fire. How does the first responder integrate that fact into his or her worldview as a person, as a firefighter, as a police officer, EMT, dispatch, as a parent? Oftentimes your first responders are parents, and it's particularly difficult on them if the children who have passed away in the incident are similar or close to the age or gender of their own children, as you might understand. Okay. Debriefing things may include that. Let me see here. I want to click on. Hold with me for just a moment. Okay. I'm saying we here on the screen. I'm talking about the first responders as well. Parents should keep their kids safe, but they don't always do that. They can't always do that. They don't always do that. How do I integrate that fact into my world if I'm a first responder or a parent? How do I reconcile the fact that kids are innocent, they shouldn't be hurt, but sometimes they are, and first responders are the ones to pick up the pieces. So you can see there are a lot of emotions going on here about the situation as well as about themselves. First responders say, I must be perfect in my job. It's my job to save lives. But 2 children died in this house fire. How did that happen? How do I integrate this fact into my sense of self? And I'm part of this firefighting unit or police squad or EMT service. How do we incorporate that? Feeling let down and incompetent, but yet the next day we need to get up and we need to go to work again. This is where the magic happens in a debriefing group. It offers the chance for peers, the first responders, to see the big picture and how it all happened. Once we're talking about it, once people talk about what they did, what happened, everyone can see who did what did and didn't work in their strategy and their services, and begin to accept they did the best they could under the circumstances. And I call that magic because I've been in probably 6 debriefings by this point, and it's just amazing to me how it comes together and how in the very beginning you start with a group of people who are upset, they've got a lot of emotions going on, and you follow a pretty typical path to where by the end of it, and the goal is that these folks are feeling better, and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail later, but they're feeling better. Some of the research on it shows they're going to sleep better, they're going to eat better, they're going to be able to talk with their loved ones better and function better with the opportunity to have this debriefing. It's really important that that folks be able to, that you guys and folks in general understand, these debriefings are not forced conversations. No one is forced to talk. I can't say that enough. At some point, debriefings have gotten kind of a bad name, but we don't do that. They are not forced to talk. What tends to happen is that the chief or captain says that, you know, I would like you to go, you need to go, this is mandatory to attend, but it is not mandatory to participate. And so that's real important to know, that folks can sit in that room and they can pass, they can not talk, they can do what they need to do. Folks who say, well, I'm okay, I don't need to come, what we'll say to them is, you know, you might be doing okay, but just your presence here might help one of your fellow colleagues. Maybe you'll have something to share that would be useful, so we'd really like for you to stay. I'm seeing on here a question, and maybe I should address this now. Can I do that?
Sure.
Okay. Someone here is saying that EMTs in Lancaster County don't have debriefings. How can these EMTs can help? That is where you could certainly talk with Brenda Pittman at the Lancaster County Emergency Management Agency. She is technically in charge of our CISM group. That, you know, usually it's the captain or, okay, I see your name on there, Laura. Hi. Maybe we can talk after this if you like, or maybe we can email one another if you want to give me your email, and I can send you the information that you need to get in contact with them. Because we certainly have had EMT folks at debriefings, so I'm sorry that you didn't get one if that was something that would have been helpful. So tell you what, just at some point send in your email and we can communicate that way, okay? And thank you for commenting. Okay, so if you look on your screen now, you see tears, anger, questions. What's happening is debriefings, the group recreates the incident in detail. They might be saying, you know, this is not where I want to be. Hold on a second. I want to go here. Okay, this is how it starts. Do that either. Hold on a second. Okay, we'll stay there. As I can say, peers offer the experience and wisdom to each other, even across departments. There have been debriefings we've had where we've had both fire and police and EMT in the same room, at the same debriefing, and it's been really neat to see how the different agencies complemented one another in their work and then literally complemented one another in the debriefing. I keep saying this over and over again. Almost always the folks in the debriefing realize that they did their best, and that's a huge lesson that they learn, a huge thing to take out. Another value of debriefings is that oftentimes your captain, the chief, the person in charge, the peers know who's most likely to have problems with the incident. Someone who has children the same age as the deceased, someone who's had their own recent personal loss, and they can look out for him or her and encourage follow-up counseling. You know, I'm realizing now what my problem is. This is an old PowerPoint that got put up, so I apologize for the typo and the misspelling. That's okay. So just bear with me, okay? So how does this whole thing work? Let's start from the very beginning. A critical incident occurs. The chief of that unit or service calls 911 dispatch and is referred to the CISM coordinator, Brenda Pittman. The chief and the coordinator together decide on whether a debriefing or a diffusing is needed, and the time, date, and location. Now, diffusing is something that happens right after the incident, within 12 hours, and it's oftentimes, it can be on site of the incident occurring, or it can be back at the police station, the fire department, the EMT department, wherever. A debriefing happens within 24 to 72 hours, and generally, they're very similar, but they're also very different. So let's just get into the process here. For our purposes, the CISM coordinator contacts the mental health debriefer. As a mental health debriefer, I might be called, and they might say, okay, Kelsey, we need you to go to such and such a place at such and such a time to deal with this particular incident. And then Lancaster County, that should be EMA, not FEMA. The EMA contacts the peer debriefer, who, as you remember, is a firefighter, EMT, police officer, dispatcher. And we're usually not in contact, the peer debriefers and the mental health debriefers, until we arrive at the debriefing site. We may not know who's going to be on the team. We just show up, and there we are. In my experience, the site is generally the fire company. So we get there early, and these really are the nuts and bolts. I hope this isn't boring to you guys, but I thought I would lay it out so you know exactly what it is that we do. We meet the person in charge. We set up the room, review the facts of the incident as we know them. We anticipate the themes and issues that might be coming on. So let's say there's been maybe numerous fires in the last few weeks. Probably a theme of that is going to be the difficulty with which they're getting up and doing it again and again and again. Maybe there's been a funding cut, maybe there's been budget talks. Whatever's going on in the greater world or town can often come down and kind of affect the folks in the room. And then we decide on our roles. And you see Rabbit. Rabbit? All right, Rabbit is the name given to a peer debriefer who will go after anyone who leaves the room, even if that person is leaving the room just to use the bathroom. We do that to make sure he or she is okay, because I've certainly had experience where a first responder has just gotten up and walked out. Obviously, we're not locking them in. You know, they can leave if they want to, but we do tell them at the get-go that, you know, we're there for them. We want them to be all right. So if they get up, we're going to follow them. And I've followed, you know, a couple of people practically into the restroom just to make sure they're okay. Luckily, they were. And then I left and said, okay, I'll see you back in the group. But obviously the Rabbit is the person who can get up and go. And that role is charged with being kind of on the lookout for anybody who exhibits some distress in the group, and they can signal that to the mental health debriefer who's leading the group. So let's look at the steps in the debriefing, because there's 7 steps, and there's kind of a flow to it. So you've got the introduction and the whip. And once again, it's a funny term. The whip is a very quick go-around through the group to share information. And your first whip is an introductory whip. And what I'm doing here is talking, I'm going to say who I am. No, actually, I'm going to go back. We're going to go through all the steps, and I'll go back to it. The next step is facts. And we share the facts as we know them, as do the first responders. There was a terrible automotive accident. 4 people were killed. We know they were college students or high school students or families. We get as many facts as we can, because everybody knows the more facts you have, the better. The less the imagination goes wild, the less the rumors start. Depending on how soon after the incident, many of the facts, there may be many facts, there may be very few facts. Okay, the next phase in our debriefing process is thoughts. And if you look here, we start with the facts, we go through thoughts, we're going to start at the cognitive domain, move into the affective domain of feelings, come back out with thoughts in the cognitive domain, because that is going to be a safer place to wrap up. We don't want people leaving a debriefing all caught up in their emotions and their affects. So right now we're in the thought phase. We ask members to share their thoughts. What was going on with you when this happened? What were you thinking? How were you imagining what was going on? Now, oftentimes the peer debriefer goes first with this, because again, he or she has generally been there, done that, and they'll model the behavior they want the other folks to engage in, which is talking. Okay. Now we're going to go into reactions, which is the 4th step, and we're asking folks to share their feelings and their reactions. Obviously, this is moving deeper into the debriefing process. People feel more vulnerable. Some people, it's harder for them to express their feelings. And some people kind of opt out now. You can see them, I don't feel like talking about this, and that's okay, because we are not there to force anything. Please remember that. All right, symptoms, that's step 5. We're asking members, how are they feeling? What are their physical symptoms? Now, again, this is generally 24 to 72 hours after an incident. So by that time, they will have been, around enough to know they're not sleeping well. Maybe they're not eating. Maybe they're sleeping too much. Maybe they're sick to their stomachs. They're having body aches. They're having headaches. These are all probably going to be very normal reactions and responses to the situation. We ask, how do they think they're going to feel tonight? How will they feel tomorrow? Now, I noted a diffusing here, and sometimes in the diffusing, I've only done one, so I've only got an N of 1 to draw from here. And this one happened immediately, literally within 35, 40 minutes after an event. And these folks were extremely exhausted. They were still in their uniforms. They were very upset. They were very tired. And as I'll explain later, a diffusing is very different. It's mostly a chance just to provide some support, tell them what, ask them what they're going to need, and then schedule a debriefing for a later date, which we did. Because sometimes in a diffusing, they're too tired even though they've got symptoms yet because they're just exhausted and it's too early yet. Symptoms. We're going to ask the folks, how have you coped with symptoms like this in the past? And we'll get all kinds of examples. I talk with my friends. I talk with my spouse. I hug my kids. I call my mom. I zone out. I sleep. I drink alcohol. And at this point, it's important not to be judgmental about what they're doing because that's not going to go over real well, and I'll have a little story later on to share about that. Now we get to the wisdom part. And we're going to ask, how have you guys handled the past incidents and what works and what doesn't? What can the others offer as what works for them? And my experience has been folks are pretty open about, well, I did this and it worked for me. I did that and it worked for me. And again, the beauty and the magic of this is that it's coming from the peers, not from us, not from the mental health debriefers. Because again, if I've never fought a fire or, rescued somebody from a burning building, I don't know how that feels. But the peers do. We share no judgments because remember, we're a group-centered intervention, not leader-centered. We are not the experts. The experts are the peers. We are simply there to facilitate their learning from one another. All right, again, wisdom. We ask, how will you handle this? We're going to review the strategies and behaviors that worked. And this is a fairly concrete part of the process because we're talking about things that they can actually do. We ask, how are you going to support each other? And oftentimes that's supported even before we suggest it. One of the debriefings I was on at the very end wrapped up and somebody said, I want you guys to come over to my house tonight and for dinner. And it was really neat because it looked like most everybody was going to do that. A few people, you could see they weren't interested, they had their own thing going. That was a really good example of support. So then we do a conclusion whip, in which case we go around the room again and we're summarizing what we've heard. And in that case, a mental health debriefer like myself would say, and that's part of my role there, I heard folks saying this, that, and the other. Some people want to sleep more. Some people are going to start working out. Some people are going to take their kids to the park, or they're going to go take their dog for a run, or they're going to be lifting weights or whatever. We highlight these coping skills and how to apply them, and we remind them that we're going to stick around after the debriefing if they want to talk further. And that's real important. We don't say, can we stick around? We just stick around. And then if it looks like we're not needed, then we leave, okay? And then we remind them that if it's a diffusing, we can come back for a debriefing. Or if it's a debriefing, we can come back again if we need to. All right, so now I'm going to go into more detail about debriefing. How do we start? All right, we start with an introduction. And we're going to be saying, introducing who we are. I'm going to say, my name is Kelsey. I am from the Lancaster County CISM team, and my role here today is to help facilitate some healing for you guys. We explain the process, we set the expectations, and we set the ground rules. And the ground rules are huge. The ground rules are, first and foremost, confidentiality. Nothing that is said in that room can leave that room. Okay? We don't take notes. We don't write down, John Smith said thus and so, or Susie, Jones said this or that. We take very minimal notes in terms of, we may say there were 20 people present. We lasted for an hour and a half. The major themes were loss and sadness, and we're going to be following up in a week. Okay, we take very, very minimal notes. Only those connected with the incident are allowed. Okay, if you are not connected with that incident, either as dispatch or a first responder, then you are not allowed at this debriefing. No press, no journalists, no newspaper, no radio, no TV, no nothing. And we ask if there are any press present because apparently in the past that happened. So they're then asked to leave. We tell them we'll go for about an hour. Sometimes we don't say that. Sometimes we say we just go for as long as it takes. In my experience, when you say that, people get kind of nervous. So we try to give them some kind of framework. We definitely tell them we're not going to be there all night or all afternoon. We say to folks, you might not want to be here, but please stay. As I said earlier, your being here will be support for your colleagues, and maybe you'll have something to share that will really help somebody else. So even if you don't think you need it, we'd like you to stay. We tell them you're probably going to feel better, sleep better, eat better as a result of this meeting. I've already said the thing about notes, and we're not going to take any breaks. If you need to get up and go to the bathroom, that's fine, but somebody's going to go with you and make sure you're okay. And then finally, we will stay around after the session in case you want to talk. And finally, turn off your cell phone. Some people, if they're still on call for something, obviously they have to keep that on, but we do want people's full attention as much as we can get it. Okay, so we do the whip. My name is Kelsey. I was not at the scene. I learned of the incident when CISM called me. Okay, my name is Mark. This would be the firefighter. This is composite data. I drive a tanker for company 2. I was second on the scene. Okay. The value of the whip is that it's facts only, so it's not very intrusive. We're starting at a gentler place and then working down a little bit into the deeper picture. We get the big picture, so people know who did what, who does what, and the folks in the group will model others' delivery. So the process moves pretty quickly. We don't want to get real bogged down here. We want to give everybody a chance to say something and then move on. And as you can see, we're in the cognitive domain here. We're doing thoughts. Okay. The next step is initiating. Again, we're talking thoughts and feelings. We ask folks to describe what they saw, what they did from their own perspective. It might be something like, when I drove up, I saw that your truck was here. I've worked with you before. I felt relief. Or, I saw that you were here with the hoses. If it's a firefighting situation, I know you're really good with that. I was happy to see somebody experienced with it. So I felt good that you were here. Somebody else might say, when the police pulled up, I thought, well, I'm really glad they're here because we need some additional help. What we're doing is putting the pieces together. And folks start to talk. The first responders will start to say, oh, yeah, I remember when you did that. Or, yeah, I was doing this while you were doing that. And you can almost see the puzzle pieces being put together as they kind of collaborate on what their roles were during the incident. You've got to remember, and we have to remember, every single fire call, police call, EMT call is not a critical incident to them. So this is still oftentimes an atypical event for many first responders. So they need that big picture so they can make sense of it to the degree that they can. And that's important to remember too. Okay, so the next step, we're talking reactions. We ask them, what made this incident hard for you? And we'll hear all kinds of different things. This was my first time, or this was a child who died. My child is the same age, or, I was not prepared to see something like this. Or this is my 50th time doing this, and I'm tired of doing this, So then we discuss common member thoughts. What are a lot of folks talking about? We say common thoughts versus normal thoughts because we don't really want to get into normal and abnormal. But we still want to get across the point that it is more than likely, the reactions are more than likely pretty normal and typical given an abnormal situation. So we're going to discuss other members' reactions. Maybe someone was scared when the rest of them weren't. And that might be something we'll come back to because that might be hard for that person to verbalize, or maybe they're embarrassed when they shared that. So the second mental health debriefer, generally they're going to be, hopefully we get 4 people in the group, 2 mental health debriefers and 2 peer debriefers. The second mental health person is taking notes here and remembering, okay, that guy over there in the green shirt, his name is Joe. We need to come back to him because he was saying some things that were a bit off the track of everybody else, and we want to make sure we get to them. Okay. We discuss those that are different from the common reaction. We normalize that too. Because if you look at, for instance, anxiety, some people, when they're anxious, they shake. Some people cry. Some people laugh inappropriately. But for them, it may be appropriate because that's how they handle anxiety. Then we identify and name the emotions that are offered by members. And that would be probably where a mental health debriefer would be doing it. I've heard people say they're angry. They're angry that the water was frozen in the hoses, or they're sad that, so many people died, or they're disappointed that more people aren't as upset as they are. Whatever it is they're saying, we're going to name the emotion so they can kind of grab a hold of it and see it for what it is. Okay. When we look at it for issues that are either expressed or implied, we're talking about the 3 R's here. We're talking about recovery. It's recovery from uncomfortable sensations, thoughts, and memories, which now puts it in the symptom sphere. So now we're in the step labeled symptoms, where we're still kind of deep in the process. The 3 R's, as I said, recovery from uncomfortable sensations, thoughts, or memories, the resolution of dilemmas, and the resolution of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, and despair. And that's a lot. That's a lot to have to handle. And this is where the wisdom comes in. Because we're talking about symptoms, and in that recovery from uncomfortable sensations, people who are having all types of difficult issues. Because when you look at something as traumatic as a critical incident, their thoughts and feelings are going to be all tied up with the smells of the incident, the sights of the incident, the sounds of the incident. I've heard firefighters and police say they had never smelled burning flesh before, or they had never realized, somebody could bleed so much. So there's some very, very vivid and difficult sensory emotions going on here. So this is where the peer debriefers are so valuable, because they have, for the most part, seen and dealt with this, whereas a lot of the mental health debriefers may not have. I certainly haven't. So it's good to have them there. So in any event, we're going to be talking about how to manage things. And a lot of folks are going to say, I don't want to talk about this with anybody. I don't want to talk to my mom or my wife or my husband or my kids. And they'll talk to one another. And what I've heard a lot over the years is, I don't want to burden my family with what I'm going through. And we can't tell them, we can't tell them that's wrong. We can't tell them not to do that. So we just help them figure out the best way for them to handle it. And oftentimes it's just going to be within their firefighter family or their police family or their EMT family. So at this point, we're getting people to talk about what worked, and that's the wisdom. Okay? You guys understand what I'm talking about? You may be getting sick of hearing the word by now. I don't know. But anyway, so now we're going to come to conclusion. And we're well into an hour, if not a little bit past by this point, kind of on an average, maybe into an hour and 20 minutes. And we're going to summarize individual status. How are you doing? How's everybody doing? How will you go on? Because more than likely we've heard people say, I'm not sure I can go on. I'm not sure I think I want to quit. I don't know if I ever want to do this again. And what they're going to get oftentimes is encouragement from each other. And that's where we're saying, okay, how are you all going to help each other? What can you do? And you'll also hear people saying, you know what, here's my cell phone number. You call me tonight. They're saying it to each other, not to us. They're saying it to the first responders. Call me tonight if things get hard. I'm willing to talk to you. I really want to help. And I talked earlier about the individual who invited everybody to his house for a get-together. What I didn't say is that, I was fairly new at this then, and, knowing what I know about the effect of alcohol on affect, and it's not a good idea psychologically to be drinking a lot when you're depressed or sad or anxious. So I just happened to kind of spit that out at them, and boy, my words were politely drowned out and disregarded. So I realized at that point that coming together as a group and finding their own way was probably going to work okay. I imagine they would figure out, after a couple of days of not feeling better after heavy drinking, someone's going to point out to them, that's not working for you. But the other thing about a debriefing is that we're in touch with the chief or with the captain. He or she knows to look out for the things that we talked about. And they generally, I think, will get the word that so-and-so is not doing well, they're still drinking a lot, they're not doing what they need to be doing. And if needed, we can do a follow-up, and we will do a follow-up. We do offer follow-up counseling one-on-one to folks if it looks like it's needed. We arrange that through the CISM group, and the executive board finds a qualified mental health professional, and that individual can get free counseling from 1 to 3 sessions. So we don't leave them hanging. We definitely continue to help them. So we're wrapping up now. We're concluding the debriefing session, and we solicit suggestions for ongoing support. We've done that. And then we do the closing whip. And once again, we're going around the room, because we would have put those chairs together in a circle back in the very beginning, which is really important, so everybody can see each other. And so, they can look at each other, they can hear each other. Now we're going around the room saying, okay, and usually our mental health debriefers started. I would start if I were lead, and I would say, and I have said, I am honored to be here. I sleep better knowing that you're here to keep me safe, which is so true. And then I let the next person talk, and they start saying, well, this is what happened for me, and this is what happened for them. the mental health debriefers and the peer debriefers are going to acknowledge any dissatisfactions with the process, because not everybody's going to like it. Not everybody's going to think it was worthwhile. Some people are just going to say, wow, that was a waste of an hour. But, you know, that happens. We revisit any neglected concerns. Remember I told you earlier that the second mental health debriefer is going to be on the lookout for folks who might, it looks like something's not quite right, or they're not talking, or they said something and we need to come back to it. So we'll revisit that at the WIP. If they don't want to discuss it, then when we are still hanging around, we will revisit it then. We thank them, we dismiss them, and then we hang around. And almost always there is coffee, there is food, there's something, and it's not like an awkward hanging around. We are kind of wandering around, and folks are talking to us generally. And if it looks like they're ready for us to leave, we are pretty intuitive and we can pick up on that, and so we pack up our bags and we go. We leave behind some information on CISM, how they can get a hold of us. We leave behind some information on what to expect in terms of symptoms, reactions, and coping, and all of that kind of stuff. So then we, as a group, 3 or 4 of us, will go out to the parking lot more than likely, sit in our cars together, and we will have our post-debriefing meeting, in which case we're going to say, okay, who needs follow-up? We're thinking about the folks inside. We think that this guy and this woman and this other person might need some follow-up. That will be recorded in our CISM report to make sure that the ball doesn't get dropped anywhere. And so we turn that report into our coordinator, who will contact the chief or captain of this particular unit or station and say, okay, you know, we think, or your debriefers think that maybe another visit is warranted, or maybe we should look into getting some one-on-one counseling for these 3 individuals. So as you can see, we inform the captain or the chief if follow-up's needed, and then a lead mental health debriefer completes and turns in the CISM report, which again does not contain any particularly confidential material, but it may simply say, we think that this individual could benefit from some follow-up. All right, so miscellaneous. All right, I've got some miscellaneous things here. Debriefings after diffusing, okay? Do you remember a diffusing is something that is given so close to the time of the incident that there may not even been time for feelings to really be elicited, for folks to know what's going on. It's pretty much giving them a chance to sit together, take a breath, give them some support, allow some ventilation of feelings, and get them to look after themselves and each other. I've been at one diffusing I went to, they talked so they needed sleep more than anything else. And we were back, I think 2 days later to give them the debriefing. Okay. Now I don't have a PowerPoint for the next couple of things I want to talk about because I did it yesterday and I didn't get the PowerPoint done. So here's what I want to say. There's been some research into this critical incident stress debriefing and critical incident stress management, and it's gotten some mixed reviews. And I wanted to make sure that you guys are getting a fairly complete picture. Especially the critical incident stress debriefing, it gets mixed reviews in the literature. The CISD notion was founded in 1983 by Jeff Mitchell, who of course views it very positively and has kind of enunciated criteria that must be present for it to work effectively. And we'll talk in a minute about the things that people have said that it doesn't work effectively. But these are the things that must be present according to Mitchell. The first is that the group must be homogeneous. They all must be first responders of that particular incident. It's not going to work if you have a heterogeneous group because they do not have enough in common to have that shared experience. Second, the group members must be psychologically ready. And they must not be so fatigued or distraught that they cannot participate in the discussion. If that's the case, then you need to hold off, or we need to hold off on doing the debriefing until they are in a better emotional state. They may need some one-on-one, which is a facet of CISM, the overall overarching process. CISM can do one-on-one, they can do debriefings, they can do diffusings, and they can do on-site work. I've not been involved in any of that on-site, so I'm not going to talk about that today, but that certainly is a CISM function. All right, So the third thing that Jeff Mitchell says must be present for his CISD to work is that members must have had the same level or about the same level of exposure to the incident. So they need to all be coming from about the same place. And finally, the members or responders must not still be involved in the incident. They can't still be fighting the fire or still carrying out victims or doing any of those things, or at least the situation must have moved past the acute stage. Okay? So those four things must be present for CISD to work. All right. Now the criticisms of CISD, critical incident stress debriefing. Some of the folks in the literature say it's not helpful. In some cases it can be harmful. There's some literature that you may want to take a look at, and I've got some of the notes here, and I could email them to you if you wanted them as well. A couple of articles reporting that CISD did not work with hospitalized burn victims. Well, Mitchell would say that it didn't work because those were not first responders, those were victims. And CISD was not developed for victims, only developed for first responders. Hobbs reported that CISD did not work on accident victims. Same thing. They were not first responders, they were victims. And Mitchell would say this was not developed for victims. So a couple of articles, psychological debriefing does not prevent PTSD. It's in a web-based article by the Psychiatric Times. And CISD efficacy in question in the New School Psychology Bulletin. Both are pretty critical of CISD. Again, Mitchell defends it by saying it is not to be used one-on-one, it is not to be used on individuals who are not first responders. And he says the research is quite positive if these two conditions are present. If personnel have been properly trained in CISM, and if providers adhere to well-published and internationally accepted standards of CISM practice. Speaking for the Lancaster County CISM, I believe we meet this criteria. There's a good deal of training that we go through. Our training is updated. We have updates just about every 6 to 8 weeks, I think, maybe every other month. They are extensive. They are sometimes exhaustive. And we do a lot of role-playing and practicing. So I feel confident saying that what we're doing is very good. It's very legitimate. It meets the criteria, for being effective. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't think I've left anything out. I apologize for some of these slides being a little mixed up. It was supposed to be a different set, but that's okay. We got through it. So can I call for questions now?
They'll either raise their hand or it'll sit there. Anybody have any questions? I don't see anybody's raised. I don't see any hands raised. There's somebody that wrote something.
Oh, Shauna, thank you. She said a great topic. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shauna. If you all have questions, could I give them my email?
Sure.
Can I say that? Okay, I thought you would put that on PowerPoint. This is my email. If you've got questions you want to ask individually, or if you're watching this at a later date, or something comes up, please email me. It is KELSEYWABACKELS@millersville.edu. If you don't have access to email, my phone number is 717-872-3122. I really do appreciate your listening to me this afternoon. Thank you so much for your attention. I see another thank you for somebody else. Thank you so much. And I guess, do I sign off now, Dwayne? I'm going to give it over to Dwayne. Thank you guys very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Backels, and thank you, everybody, for participating in our first virtual seminar of the spring semester. Again, as was stated, we'll put up her contact information also on our virtual seminar site as soon as we get Shauna back here from the great north of Pennsylvania. We'll have her do that. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy your day and enjoy the weekend. Okay, we're going to